Welcome back. We hope everybody had a wonderful and happy Easter. It is Monday, April 21st, and there's the great John Whittle. The birds scary inside today, John? What's going on?
No.
We got the neighbor doing some, I don't know what's going on over there, but there's a big old truck that's out there making a whole bunch of racket. So we're going to have to go inside to the office today.
That's,
That's
good
very
looking out,
disappointing.
man. It's very kind
Can we just
of you,
pipe it
though,
in?
so we didn't have to.
Can we pipe in some bird noise?
Phil, get on that for us.
Phil, pipe in some bird noise and go ahead and FedEx a parakeet to the Whittle residence.
Somebody wake Phil up. Ask him to hit the bird button. All right, John, we'll turn to baseball first with you here. South Carolina does pick up a series win. It finished pretty rudely, thanks to the Ole Miss bats and the lack of strikes to start game 3 the other day. But they did pitch well in games 1 and 2. Mike had the call on the SEC Network Plus with Coach Tanner, which was brilliant. And obviously, John, you were sitting upstairs. So they are off the schneid. We can start there. They're off the schneid in the series wins department.
Yeah, that's a positive thing. Winning those two and it being good baseball. I mean, that was my biggest takeaway from the first 2 days was just good, clean baseball all the way around. You got a few big hits. I mean, was not overwhelming offensively, but good offensively, and obviously pitched great. Both in starts and out of the bullpen, played clean defense. Mike and I agreed on the one error on the weekend. I think Coach Tanner disagreed with us on that scoring ruling. So, it was either a one error weekend or a no error weekend. So you played great defense all weekend too.
Mm-hmm. I'm on Coach Tanner's side. I've made that clear.
I actually am too. Yeah, John.
Derek thought it was an error.
Yeah.
Okay. It's Derek. Okay.
It's Derek. Yeah. I actually, when they called it that, Ray and I looked at each other like, wow. We can go back. It's a 50-50 call, but it's a late hop. It clearly hits something, pebble, whatever, and then gets by him. So I would have scored it a hit. I thought it was a little rough error, but your point's still well taken. That all 3 games were clean defensively. Even the one that got away yesterday because you just didn't have the pitching.
How many double plays they turned, guys? 6 in 3 games?
It was 3 the first game, 2 the second game. I'm not sure what it was in the third game. Let's see. It
either way.
5. Yeah, one more. Aiden Palmer had the one with the bases loaded too. So that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. The one.
Yeah. No, Jamie, you've pointed this out all year long, and that the one thing this team has done well is they play pretty airtight defense overall, with the exception of a couple of lapses. The Oklahoma game obviously stands out there, but they look pretty fundamentally sound in the field in spite of the fact you've got some guys that aren't plus defenders. But no, I thought it reminded me, and I said this on one of the broadcasts, those first 2 games, particularly Thursday night, had a early 2000s feel to them. Great starting pitching, flawless defense, and timely hitting. And very often back then it was the home run. This team doesn't have quite the same amount of power, but they have enough. And then once I found out, and I didn't find out till I talked to Paul Maneri at the ballpark on Saturday, that SQ wasn't going, I was like, oh boy. And that turned out to be what it turned out to be. But yeah, it was just like, and I'm sure you felt this way, John, as you're watching those first 2 games. It was like, where has this been all year? Right? Because both of you guys have said all year long, this team does have some talent and should be better than what the record is. And you saw that on Thursday and Friday.
For sure. I mean, it's a great question. It's hard to pinpoint the exact answer. It does start with throwing strikes, and that's not a trait that this team has had. And I guess when that gets going, everything else kind of fell in line a little bit. Matthew Becker had a little bit of a problem, and Tyler Pitzer had a little bit of a problem throwing strikes on Saturday in the third game of the weekend. But they just got beat around a lot too. So, but those first 2 games is exactly how you draw it up. That's like what South Carolina, what Palmineri would have wanted this team to be, and thought it could be. So you got a great start from Brandon Stone, who was really impressive. And I was looking back, and Ole Miss has the second fewest ground balls of any team in SEC play. They were averaging 6.5 ground ball outs a game, and Brandon Stone got 15 of them, with 3 of those being double plays. So he had 18 outs on ground balls, and Ole Miss has 6.4, 6.5 a game. So I thought that was really impressive to pitch to his strengths and get the Ole Miss batters to do something they're not accustomed to doing.
I mean, Jake did the same thing in the game 2 start. I mean, how many ground ball outs did he have? It was a decent amount.
He had 7. Yeah, he had 7. Yeah. So it's a little bit more.
Yeah,
and a lot of strikeouts too.
Yeah, he had 7 strikeouts. I think he did walk 3, but he only gave up 3 hits. I mean, it was. I think going into the series, one of the things that if you looked at what Ole Miss did well, Coach Lake talked about this on Friday, and which obviously they hit the ball out of the yard, and they're going to hit a lot of balls in the air, and a lot of them are going to leave the yard. So if you're able to stay down and you've got some run on it, you can probably get them to do some things that they're uncomfortable doing, and that's what happened those first 2 games, those first 18 innings. I mean, those are the best back-to-back starts all year long, regardless of competition, because they did it against a top 15, top 20 team in Ole Miss. And they were able to get the wins, and that's what's been missing with this. Look, we could talk about the inconsistencies of the offense all we want. That's fine. We knew going into the year they weren't going to be backbreakers offensively. They weren't just going to come out and take your soul from you, but they were going to have to pitch, and they just haven't. John, you said it a minute ago. They have not thrown enough strikes. That happened on Saturday. They couldn't throw strikes in the first inning, and Jarvis Evans didn't even record an out. And there they are. They're down big and pretty much with no prayer of coming back and winning the game. Those other games, they got big pitches in big spots. They made nice plays, and they were able to muster enough offense to win games. That's how this team can win games. So, moving forward, it's not rocket science. We could sit here and we could decipher and do everything we want to do like everybody wants everybody to do every time they cut the mics on. It's pretty simple. If you pitch, you're going to have a chance to win games, right, John? I don't think there's a whole lot more to it than that.
Yeah, and in South Carolina just hadn't, and as you mentioned, ton of walks all year. They've got 94 in league play this year, which is next to last in the SEC, ahead of only Missouri, and Missouri really shouldn't count in any stats this year. They're so bad, but that's where it starts oftentimes. And I mean, you got guys walking people who have had problems walking people before, but you got guys walking people who haven't really had that problem in the past. So it's just hadn't gone right over there this year for that staff in a lot of ways, but that being certainly one of them.
I will say this. We'll turn our attention to Kentucky here in just a second, and then we've got John. We got softball, and I know you don't have all the ins and outs of the spring game and stuff like that, but I do want to mix just a little bit, if you don't mind. Just sprinkle the top with football. I think I mentioned this on Friday, Mike. I'm pretty sure you were on when I mentioned it. And Thursday night, obviously when you get a start like that from Brandon Stone, you get some key double plays that are able to get the crowd energized and the team and stuff like that. Just watching him up close, and he had that. That's really the first time I've seen it all year out of one of South Carolina's starting pitchers. Like, I'm not losing tonight. I'm just kind of letting y'all know you can hop on my back, and I'm going to carry you to the end of this deal. And then in the 9th inning, you had the fans stand up and cheer when they saw him walk back on the mound. Like, that to me is South Carolina baseball right there. That is game. Mike, you used to be the voice of this team. Very smart crowd, very smart baseball group of people. You're always going to have the fringe, outlandish folks that just spout off stuff. But for the most part, there's a large percentage of people who followed this program closely and know what it looks like and understands what's going on the field. And honestly, the success of this program, rebuilding it here, you gotta find as many of those moments as you can and keep stacking them on top of one another to rejuvenate that feel good, if you will, within the program, John. And obviously, I got to go to Lexington this weekend, a place where largely they've struggled over the years. It's I don't know why. But if they can go out and find another moment or two like that, you can start to maybe create an identity and keep things headed in the right direction. I mean, there's a sliver of hope there. It's a sliver, but they have to have those moments stack on top of one another in order to keep that alive.
Yeah, and I don't. It was a great weekend in terms of results, and it keeps you, I guess, from being out of the conversation. It doesn't really put you back into the conversation for the NCAA tournament, but it keeps you from being out of it, I guess. But
that's right.
But yeah, Kentucky's going to be a bear this weekend. South Carolina, they had a stretch of about 2 or 3 really bad weeks of baseball back in 2023. And that Kentucky game, or that Kentucky series, was the biggest part of it. I remember just everybody getting hurt and everybody being hurt. Like Evan Stone was playing second base, hadn't played second base since his freshman year of high school. It was that weekend was a disaster up there. But you got to go up there and win 2 out of 3. And I've been kind of talking about, and I don't know what Mike's perspective on this is exactly, but I think you feel okay about yourself and your positioning, going into the SEC tournament if you've won 13 games in the league, and for South Carolina to get to that 13 win mark, you gotta over these last 4 series, you got to sweep 1 and you've got to win the other 3. So you're gonna have to go up there and play a team that maybe necessarily it plays a different style of baseball than pretty much anybody else in the league. Oklahoma does some things somewhat similar, but Kentucky is a bear for a lot of different reasons. And they just took 2 out of 3 from Tennessee this past weekend, and so they'll be feeling pretty good about themselves. They do play Louisville on Tuesday, so we'll see how that goes, see how that's managed. But South Carolina's got a tough little test ahead this week.
To your point on how they play, one of the key runs in that series was on a squeeze. I mean, they do things that we don't see much anymore. Mingione does. They're not nearly as talented as they were a year ago, their first Omaha team, but like you said, they just took 2 out of 3 against Tennessee. They keep you on your toes. They're kind of like that gnat that won't go away. A lot of times you're constantly trying to shoo it away, but it just keeps coming at you. So it'll be a good test. They're not one of the more talented teams in this league this year compared to the tops, but all you got to do is just see what they just did last weekend to know how much of a threat they can be.
They stole 18 bases against Tennessee this past weekend.
I know, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
And I love the fact that they play a different kind of ball. They're in some ways they're anti-analytics. And it reminds me a little bit, if you want to go all the way back to the way Tennessee used to play when it was Delmonico, and they went to a couple World Series when you had Chris Burke and Todd Helton and all those guys. But they routinely led the league in steals. They played a lot of small ball. The park played large at Lindsey Nelson, and they were going to be kind of counter to what a lot of teams were, which is just grip it and rip it and see how many home runs we can hit. So are you going to the ballpark, John, this weekend?
Oh, well.
Have you been before?
I have. Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful ballpark. Now it's rarely full, but they spent a ton of money, and it's a really, really nice ballpark. I don't know what kind of crowds you're looking at, but I thought they did a really good job with that design compared to the prison yard that they used to play in.
Yeah, as nice as it is on the outside, it's 100 times better on the inside. The player facilities are just incredible down there. So,
yeah.
I don't want to take the conversation too far, but in this direction. But South Carolina's got to do some things around Founders Park, I think, to spruce it up a little bit. The rest of the SEC, again, apart from Missouri, you shouldn't consider Missouri in any baseball conversation anymore. But the rest of the SEC is comparable to South Carolina, to Founders Park in a lot of ways. Like, it's not the big differentiator that it used to be when it comes to recruiting. Everywhere's got a nice place, and everybody's got a full house. When they're winning, everybody's got the analytic machine data cap and those things and the pitching labs and whatnot. Like everybody's got those things now. So, Kentucky's in a great spot from a facility standpoint, and South Carolina probably needs a little sprucing up.
Coach Tanner's, I think before the season, I talked to him. He might have said something on the air, but we were talking off the air, and they obviously have a bunch of things that they're looking through. I mean, he's not the AD anymore, clearly, but they've been working on this. I don't know when all those plans will be finalized and said or whatever it is. And let's make it crystal clear, John nor anybody else is implying that just fix those things and they'll start winning games. And that's not what anybody's saying. But just because you brought up the ballpark, it used to be an erector set up there in Lexington. I remember routine fly balls in shallow right field that somehow dropped on the other side of the wall. I mean, it was ridiculous. But it
was pretty awful.
Yeah,
for a long
the
time.
lip behind going into the outfield, from the infield to the outfield. I mean, it was a 2-foot drop back there.
Yeah.
I mean, it would go down as much as Clemson's hill would go up. Like it was ridiculous. That place was a dump, but the new place is really nice.
Well, we'll see what they can do. As you pointed out, one of the problems Kentucky had earlier this season as well was pitching. They were not throwing it very well, and they have turned that around. They're 8-10 in league play. They've won 2 series now that they've defeated the Vols in Knoxville, and very similar to what just happened a couple of weeks ago. Oh, A&M struggling. Oh, they beat Tennessee in Knoxville, and they come home, and here comes South Carolina. So hopefully that doesn't repeat itself this weekend. All right, John, tonight is game 3. Speaking of Kentucky, of the softball series, the Wildcats are in town. The Gamecocks have already won it. They beat the you-know-what out of them in game 1 on Saturday, and then a squeaker yesterday, 1-0. Ashley Chastain's group is 34-11. They are 5th in the RPI. They have played in the most quad 1 games in college softball this year, 30 of those, and they're 19-11 in those contests. I spent some time chatting with her on Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon before making my way to the baseball field. And obviously you got to keep winning. This is all with the premise that they have to continue to win games. But as of now, they are 100% locked to host a regional. Based on, I don't know how much of this you've been studying or if you have at all, but based on what we know today, what do they need to continue to do to be a top 8 national seed and have home field advantage all the way through the playoffs, or at least to the World Series?
Yeah, I mean, I would think they would probably just need to win a couple of – they've already clinched the series this weekend, obviously, so you've got 2 more SEC series left after this one. Win 4 of those games? I mean – you feel like you're in a pretty good spot, right? From an RPI standpoint. I haven't looked this morning to see where they are. I know last week they were in the top 5 in the RPI. Are they still there?
They're at 5. According to Warren Nolan, they're at 5.
Yeah. You've got to feel really good about a regional host spot. I think you start looking at top 8 and that should be the goal right now. You're definitely in position for it. So, there's some teams ahead of them in the SEC standings, and that plays a little bit of a part in there. But it's not the whole deal. It's not the whole resume. So, you look at what you finish SEC play strong. A couple of series wins or a sweep in there, and I feel like you got a great shot, especially when you go to Athens for the SEC tournament and win a couple of games there.
One thing that Ray told me, if that happens, they're going to look to install some extra seats, bleachers, whatnot
in the outfield, right?
I guess, yeah, wherever it fits. But
yeah,
because Gamecock fans will come out and support that in droves.
It'll sell out in a hurry.
Yeah, having met Chastain for the first time this weekend, she came by the booth. I mean, that's a rock star. Like she's got the potential to really be a fan favorite, and I've said this many times, and John knows this, being around a bunch of SEC cities and travels. Softball can quickly become more than a fringe sport when you're good at it. And the fans when they give the sport a shot, they fall in love with it. It's quicker. It's action-packed. It just has a certain buzz in the air that sometimes, quite frankly, if a baseball game is dragging and lacks, softball doesn't. So I could see that if this is not just an outlier, and I have no idea who's coming back, and I'll leave that up to you, John. But if they can put together a consistent postseason run, you will see this fan base fall in love with the sport and fall in love with her program.
Yeah, I agree completely, and especially when you make some comparisons to baseball. I mean, these games last about 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
They're real quick, and there's always a little bit of energy in those places. I mean, and a lot of it is because of the fact that the dugouts are as involved as they are, and that's a turnoff for some people, but for others it's not. So I don't know. I was telling somebody, I don't think I said it here, but I've never been in my life to a South Carolina softball game, not even back when I was a student until this year. And, now I've been to a half a dozen or so. And it's been a really, really good experience. I mean, I skipped 2 of the baseball games to go to a softball game. So it's been an enjoyable team to watch. They've got some personalities out there. Wrote a few features on a few of their players, and it's been. I do think I agree with you. I think if South Carolina is to host a regional as they should, and certainly a super that Beckham Field is going to be packed out, and that's a nice facility too. Like there's a lot to like about Beckham Field as well. So I think they probably deserve a few more fans than what they have when I've been out there. But I do think that there'll be some folks who are latching on with the success that they're having.
Well, it's a very fan-friendly facility. It's easy to get into. You have access to the whole thing when you're in there. A couple of things too. One on the regional question. Right now. They're in a situation that we have oftentimes discussed on the baseball side when it comes to the postseason. How many SEC teams are you going to give a host site to? I mean, that's, you know what I mean? I know that there are a couple of others considered around the country, but then you also have a couple of ACC programs like Florida State, so how regionalized is this thing going to be? Is somebody going to get left out in lieu of a host site on the West Coast just to try to make things a little bit fair? And you don't want to be one of those probably 2 or 3 teams that's in that mix. You want to try to be in front of that. So obviously that's a big thing right now. And I'll make one other point. And I was talking to Ashley and some of her staff about this the other day. Mike, you mentioned the word rock star. I think one of the things that goes into that is how invested you are in the program that you're in, right? And how much is this? Are you here to coach? Are you here to build? What does that entail? And she pointed out to me, these road trips they've gone on. Like I said to her, I was a little surprised. I cut on the TV, they were at Arkansas. And we knew what to expect in Oklahoma. I didn't realize that Arkansas people love their softball as much as they do. And I said, the outfield is full, and you've got all, and so they take notes everywhere they go, and they go on all these tours in these when they get to these ballparks, and they go and they look at the facilities, the inside and the out, and they meet with different people and learn about their fundraising experiences and how they've done this and how they designed that and what they did. I mean, she has an entire vision for what this thing needs to be at South Carolina and how it's going to get there. And it's really neat to listen to that because I do think that, John, this, you go on the road. Mike, this, you go on the road as the voice of the Gamecocks. John, you're there. Teams get in. They're there to do a job. They work out. They stretch. They throw. They play. They eat, and then they go to sleep. There's a schedule when you go on the road, and they've deviated from that a little bit. This is a learning experience to build this program to the best that they can build it to. And it was a really enlightening conversation for me. And I see what they're going at. I think that goes into that term rock star you used, Mike.
Yeah,
or anybody?
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know that was for me.
Well, I was just kind of leaving it open ended. Whoever wanted to pick
Okay.
it up,
I'm just so distracted by not having the bird that I thought John would make up for the lack of white noise in this segment
he's
with a
tweeting.
comment there. But no, again, and she is someone. Look, that's one of Ray's hires, and certainly so it's kind of a soft spot in his heart for seeing her build something here. And I've seen them built at a lot of other SEC schools. I mean, as much as we talk about the dominance in SEC baseball, it's even greater in softball. Correct me if I'm wrong, John. Every team made the tournament last year from the SEC.
I think that's right.
Not everybody has a team, but everybody that has a team made it.
I think that's right.
I believe that's right. And
it's
so,
usually not more than one or two that's left out.
This is another thing that the SEC has really put its signature on as, okay, let's go ahead and dominate this thing. And like I said, I just think sometimes falling in love with the coach and the coach's personality is a big part of selling a sport like this. And I think she has that. I think she's kind of got that personality and the ability to sell. You know, when Ray first got the baseball job, a lot of what he was doing was selling. We talked about this on the air because when he got the job, South Carolina baseball was not in a good way. It was not in a good way at all. And a lot of people thought, well, SEC, it's a new era. What's this going to look like? So he never turned down an interview request. He never turned down a chance to talk to a booster. He never turned down a chance. Basically, at that point, he was selling. And he says that's what he learned from Skip Bertman at LSU. LSU baseball was nothing before Skip Bertman got there. And Skip was like Barnum and Bailey. I mean, he turned college baseball into a thing, and LSU fans quickly got behind it. So I do believe there's a lot of that's going on behind the scenes with softball as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dawn Staley, for her part, did a whole lot of selling too when she first got here. Obviously, the winning came, and people show up in droves, and tickets are sold for $500 a piece on the secondary market. So, that's obviously been built into a monster, but it hadn't always been a monster. She had to work really hard to get fans in the stands over there too. But I agree wholeheartedly with everything both of you guys said.
All right. We'll ask you one quick football question, get you out of here in the next couple of minutes, John. As far as takeaways from the spring season, if you will, or even the spring game, is there anything that came out of Friday or has come out of the last month plus of football that you believe is an important something important to watch or keep an eye on, or whatever it may be here in the summer months?
Well, our buddies Hale and Alex have done really the heavy lifting, and I certainly wasn't there on Friday night, and they've done a great job when it comes to football. I guess probably my biggest takeaway is how, I guess, I don't want to say how good because they haven't done it on the field yet, but how far along the group of wide receivers seem to be. I think that's encouraging. I heard Mike talking about. Before I jumped on about Auburn's lack of wide receivers over what you said, 72?
72, lack of a first-round wideout.
Yeah, that's incredible. But South Carolina's wide receiver room certainly seems to be in a much better place than what a lot of folks seem to believe. After last season and missing on some portal guys and whatever else. So that was something that's really been intriguing to me. Now, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean South Carolina's a 10-win team versus a 7-win team, but it's a development that I think is encouraging and exciting because let's be honest, it's fun to watch good quarterback play, good passing games, good wide receivers. Like, it's great to have an incredible offensive line, and you have to have that to be able to play competent offensive football. But those wide receivers can make you on Sports Center and bring you to your feet real quick. And I look forward to seeing those guys out there in the fall.
Well, it's come a long way. Just a couple of years ago, we didn't think they had one wide out, and now they might have more than that. John, we'll let you run on that note. North Florida tomorrow night at Founders Park, 6:30, first pitch, and we know that you'll have that covered for Carolina baseball.